Right, so this is a project that I've been waiting for since the creator told me about it in early 2024. A Liam Vickers-esque project, but without the need to drop several days of my life in order to watch it fully, so when it released a few weeks ago, I was straight into watching it, and it lived up to all of my expectations. But of course, the biggest draw for me here was the fact that this was made by somebody who I know quite well.
Ahem. The Ally program is a science fiction horror audio drama created by yours truly and inspired by the older works of Liam Vickers. Our story follows a young girl by the name of Lily Walker as her quiet life in the American Northeast is upended without warning. How do you know who to trust when the stakes are far above anything you could ever hope to comprehend? And what do you do when human lives get tossed into the equation? The only way to find out is to stay alive and to stay tuned. Alright, super cliche dime a dozen pitch aside, this is a project that I've been whittling away at for some time now. I'm both pumped and nerve-wracked to finally be able to share it with all 5 people that actually care, especially considering that I've been teasing it in some form or another for over 3 years now. Regardless, the first episode is out now over on my channel if you happen to be one of those 5, so please be afraid to come take a look. Oh, wait, that's right. I almost forgot this is an Unhelpful video. I'll be out of your hair then.
That is, in fact, the case. So, in my typical fashion, we'll be going over exactly what happened in the story, my thoughts on it, and where I think we'll be going next, because it would physically pain me to not make an incorrect theory video on a project I like. To expand on Tyro's elevator pitch from before, I'll be giving a full summary of the first episode. Go click the iCard now to watch it before the obvious spoilers. I'll give you a second. Great, now that you haven't done that, let's take a look at the worst day in Lily Walker's life. Gearing up for the final sport carnival of her school career that will be happening tomorrow, Lily escapes the monotony of the school day with her close friend Luke, taking verbal jabs at each other all the way back to the car park of the school. The day was long, drab, and boring, especially without her other friend there and a large swath of the class who decided to chuck a sickie. At least that's what she thinks happened. Fighting the urge to run Luke over for using outdated memes, she gets in the car and drives off. Whilst letting the country road take her home, Lily pulls the classic female driving trope and almost runs over a dude who was standing completely still. Horrified at the willingness of an invigilator to give her a license, she jumps out of the car and rushes over to see if the boy is okay. He is not. Covered in a black fluid of some sort, like me on a Friday night, the boy appears to be in some strange form of shock from the events that caused him to physically display no emotion and barely let any words escape his mouth. Lily, who is so caught up in her own stupidity and the irony of phones once again being written out of the plot of a horror series, doesn't pay the liquid any heed and takes the boy, who calls himself Alex, to her car in an effort to get him to her house where she can clean him up or find directions to the nearest hospital. Continuing along the normally empty road, Lily spots a large number of similar vehicles driving past them, as well as the sound of a helicopter overhead. Still largely in her own head and thinking about how she nearly committed vehicular manslaughter, Lily still pays this slightly odd sight none of her attention. Meanwhile, Alex is giving it all of his, staring at each vehicle that passes by as if his gaze alone would be strong enough to tip them over and into the trees. That clearly does not work, as Lily gets pulled over by the Rozzers but not really Rozzers. 3 of them to be exact, one of which is a reference that will actually only be understood by 5 people, myself included. Alex has clearly been listening to Ice Cube recently, so he's having absolutely none of that shit, so he goes off and commits an incredibly violent triple homicide before staring Lily down and forcing her to hang off of this cliff. And that's my summary. I've absolutely not done this project enough justice, so once again, go and watch it for yourself. I get your brain is rotted, but it can still comprehend words without Minecraft parkour running in the background. Now, for some analysis. It does not take a genius to understand that this is heavily inspired by Scary Story Time with Liam. Specifically, whatever Alex is appears to have some resemblance to the left hand seen in one of Liam's stories called Design. I will not be going over what happens in that story, largely because I haven't listened to it, but the premise of superpowered teenagers that are wrecking destruction on the world is an idea that is clearly drawn from it. The specifics of how this particular plague functions are a little bit more ambiguous, so let's pick it apart. The black ichor is the central characteristic that appears to control Alex and give him his abilities. The blood-like appearance of the liquid, as well as its tendency to run through veins, suggests it is being used as a replacement for Alex's blood and is linked with it. Think a red symbiote from Venom. Like the symbiote, the ichor we see here does not only need to appear within the body, but can also be used as a very lethal offensive weapon by taking the form of long tendrils spiking out of the user's user's back. There does appear to be a limitation on them though, as they are obviously the most effective form of attack, and the user seems to be quite fond of them.
He held one hand up to graze it with his fingers as it slid past.
So if they are available at all times, they would be used that way. The limitation I'm referring to should be the quantity of ichor available to the host. They must have a surplus of it in order to use it outside of the body, like we see at the very end of the episode. This surplus appears to be created through the absorption of blood from another human, judging from this line put in very conspicuously after the death of Evans.
Both arms were coated in the same fluid that had been covering him earlier, only now it seemed to be moving. On the arm still buried in the man's chest, it seemed to writhe and squirm its way up his forearm, almost like it was being siphoned from the corpse.
That then leads to one more question I believe I have the answer to. How do they lose this excess ichor? I believe that the substance is drained only by using its healing factor. The gunshot wound Alex takes from Johnson is definitely not the only time this kid would have been shot or injured. More on that later. So the fact that he has no visible injuries when Lily picked him up means that he must be able to self-heal, using the black liquid to replicate flesh, skin, and bone. Great. Now we know what it can do. The next question is, what caused it? My best guess at the moment is it was caused by some sort of supernatural pathogen or other sort of infection that is unique to teenagers. The notion of an early flu season and the large number of kids missing from Lily's school seems to imply this. The number of kids missing is specifically touted as being odd, and the large special operations presence in the area also suggests multiple people with the same condition as Alex. Alex himself was not recognized by Lily, but does seem to be around her age, meaning this phenomena is not specific to her own school, but is rather infecting the local area. For those of you who go to really large schools and thus don't know everybody in your school, myself and Tyromaniac both went to very small ones, so you should at least be able to recognize everyone there. Alex does present a couple more problems in terms of forming a consistent theory here due to his placement when we first encounter him. A random kid in the middle of a forested road with nobody else around is always suspicious, but for Alex's case specifically, it doesn't make a lot of sense. If he were just randomly infected without having anything to do with these special forces, then he would never have arbitrarily wandered out here. If he did have some experience with the officers, as his keen stare and instantaneous attack of them would have you believe, then how would he have escaped from them out to here? This is also why I think he's been shot before. All of this, of course, is me making the assumption that our special force team is trying to capture or kill Alex, meaning they don't have a great deal of knowledge on what he is capable of. But still, even with that not being the case, there is no reason for him to be out here. This part has completely stumped me, so I may need to wait for a second episode before finding a real conclusion. Speaking of conclusions, I can draw a couple more from something I deliberately decided to omit at the start of this video, that being the very first scene in the creepypasta itself. Something you would have picked up on if you went and watched it like I told you to. Dr. Roberts is a research scientist at some mysterious and likely very secretive government facility, working on a project that we can easily assume is closely related to our ichor problem. More specifically, from his own words, it sounds like he has come up with some potentially viable solution to get rid of the problem permanently. See, Alex is not the first victim of our pathogen. There have been numerous events reported to this agency that share a very similar description to the massacre we get to see, and as such, Dr. Roberts has been spending the last few months of his life working on understanding just how it works. A solution to a problem such as this comes in only two forms. Either it is a weapon more powerful than typical firearms designed to kill anything it shoots that is infected, or it is some sort of cure to neutralize the effects of the ichor on the body. Given this is taking place in the Midwest, I am very inclined to go with the former. Now as for that final conclusion I can make, it is the strengthening of the idea that this was not a government conspiracy. This isn't a weapon that anyone has control over, and everyone should be trying to put a stop to it. This wasn't a targeted strike or anything to thin out the population of the Midwest, nor was it a terrorist attack sent in by the Russians. In fact, it's the Russians who are in charge of stopping it.
Site Director Korbunov.
But that's all I've got for today. Thank you all for watching, and have a good one.